Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Senate Government Operations Committee. It is Wednesday, January 11th, and I'm Senator Ruth Hardy, and we are going to get started. We are hearing today for everybody. The agenda is posted. If you do need a hard copy, you can talk to Olivia about it, but it's posted on our website, and we're going to hear from a lot of people involved in public safety today, and really get a lay of the land and hear about what they do and what their legislative priorities are. We're going to start with the Department of Public Safety. I think they're joining via Zoom.
Yes.
Yeah. Are they up there?
Yes, we have 2 people.
Okay. Excellent. Can you hear us, Chief Morrison?
I can hear you. I'm trying to make it so you can hear me.
Excellent.
So well, that was pretty garbled.
Yeah, are you maybe you could get a little closer to your microphone?
Yes, I'm trying. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm struggling with my view, but that's okay.
You're struggling to hear us?
No, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Can you see us too?
I cannot see you.
Okay. You are our first Zoom witness, so we're still working out the tech, but if you don't mind being a little patient, we'll figure it out.
Totally.
Okay.
Oh, I saw you.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, Chief, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to introduce ourselves and then let you talk with us and introduce yourself. We're interested in hearing about the Department of Public Safety, what you all do. We're a very, very new committee. We have only one returning member. And so just talking about what you do, what services you provide to Vermonters, and then what your legislative priorities may be for the session. You know, what you might want us to do or not do, as the case may be. So I'm Senator Ruth Hardy. I am the new chair of the committee, and I am from the Addison district. I'm gonna go around this way.
Senator Tanya Vyhovsky. I am the vice chair of the committee, and I am from the Chittenden Central District, which represents most of Burlington, all of Winooski, a sliver of Colchester, and most of Essex.
Senator Rebecca White, and I'm from Windsor.
Hi, Commissioner. Senator Bob Norris, Franklin County.
Hello, Senator.
Good afternoon. The sun is shining on you and on us. Allison Clarkson, Windsor District.
Yes, ma'am. Good to see you.
Excellent. We have another member, another senator, Senator Ann Watson from Washington County, and she has to be a little late for another meeting. But we're gonna get started. So we do have a pretty packed agenda with a lot of people. So we have you slotted until 2. You and
that's great because I have a 2 o'clock meeting, so it's perfect.
Excellent. Take it away.
Okay, very good. My name is Jennifer Morrison. I'm the Commissioner of Public Safety. I came to the Department of Public Safety after 30 years in law enforcement with both the Burlington and the Colchester police departments. So I've served in multiple capacities in municipal policing, including Chief of Police in Colchester, a almost 4-year career in Burlington, including a return stint as interim Chief of Police in 2020. And that's about it. I have a new grandson. That's the fun fact about me. I am joined today by the Colonel and my Deputy Commissioner, Colonel Matt Birmingham. I'm just going to turn the camera a little. And Dan Batesy, who is the Deputy Commissioner. And I'm also joined by the Executive Director of Policy Development, who I suspect that you will be interacting with, Mandy Wooster. There's Mandy right there. So. DPS 101 is a story. Occasionally, I think it's the land of misfit toys when I think about the breadth of things that are here under our roof. So most prominently, of course, in what people think of first when they think of DPS is the Vermont State Police. And I am happy to go back to any of these divisions and say more about them, but I thought I would introduce all the divisions and then let you tell me what you want to know more about. So of course we have the Vermont State Police. We also are home to the Vermont Division of Fire Safety. And this is where things get broad and deep. So we have oversight of the Fire Academy down in Pittsford. But we also are engaged in the promulgation and enforcement of rules related to code compliance, building standards, fire safety standards, licensing of plumbers and electricians, signing that certificate in elevators about safety of elevators. There's a really big wide breadth of things that go on over in the Division of Fire Safety. We are also home to Vermont Emergency Management. Again, lots of stuff going on all the way down from the planning and mitigation side of things through emergency response, staffing of our State Emergency Operations Center, and into recovery. We manage hundreds of grants at any given time relative to subgranting out to communities for everything from like for instance, last week or 2 weeks ago, we finally closed out our last grant related to Irene. So we manage hundreds, if not thousands of grants at any given time related to federal disaster money or mitigation money, floodplain resiliency money, stuff like that. So those are 3 of our divisions. We, of course, have the thing that makes everything tick, which is the Division of Finance and Management, and that's where most of those grants are managed through. It's the budget process, it's the procurement, the administrative side of running this organization. We also have the Division of the Vermont Forensic Laboratory, which is a fully accredited standalone forensic laboratory that is right down here at the end of the headquarters building. It's a little bit like a beautiful castle all by itself, and they do world-class work on everything from DNA extraction to tool marks, fingerprinting, chemical analyses, drug, certifying that something is a certain type of drug, working on DUI cases, etc. We have the what they call the Division of Criminal Justice Services. It's actually 2 small divisions that for budgetary purposes get squished together into this Division of Criminal Justice Services, which is the Vermont Crime Information Center. And that is where all your criminal records are housed, your sex offender registry. If you're wanting to be a youth coach and you have to get, your fingerprints taken, they're the ones who are doing the checking to make sure you're okay to be around vulnerable people. And they do a few other things that are escaping me at the moment. And the other smaller division that is lumped into Criminal Justice Services is the Radio Technology Shop. And we are responsible for the radio infrastructure statewide, for AOT, for all state law enforcement assets, and other users of all state law enforcement, not just the Vermont State Police. So we have some technical folks who take care of all that infrastructure and make sure it's resilient and backup, etc. Did I forget anything? Oh, no, I did Vermont Emergency Management. I think I did them all.
That is
Mama doesn't want to leave out any of her kids.
well, excellent. That is great. Do you want to talk about any ongoing initiatives you have, anything that you want us to know about your work, and then your priorities?
So our priorities legislatively, as you can imagine from what I just described, you kind of run the gamut, and they ultimately all will be made known to us by the governor's priorities. But we certainly have some initiatives that we are hoping come to fruition relative to. I was just looking at this stuff. I'm sorry, I'm going in so many directions today. Relative to some position requests that we've made, but again, this all has to come from the governor. This has to finish getting through the governor's process before I say, hey, this is where we really need to go. We are up to our hips in regional communications, which I suspect might come your way for something this session, and that is a really, really big and really important project that we have what I would say is a unprecedented opportunity in front of us with two funding streams coming together. We have the state appropriation in two chunks of $11 million, and we were recently awarded $9 million in congressionally directed spending from Leahy's office for this project. And I think that in the next few months, we will be talking about that quite a bit. I don't have any recommendation or ask at this moment.
Okay,
And what are you calling that, Jen?
Regional dispatch. Regional
So,
communication.
you didn't use the dispatch words. You were using the communication.
Oh, yeah. No, this is specific
Regional
to
dispatch, great.
dispatching for first responders, emergency, police, fire, and EMS, basically.
okay, this is great. Great to hear. This is a conversation we're already hoping to have, and so I will definitely want to have you all in for some more detailed testimony whenever you're able to do that. The sooner the better, I think. We have enough lead time to get something done. I'm glad to hear that you have $20 million on the table for it right now, it sounds like. So that's a great news. Senator Clarkson.
Yes. Jen, given we got so close to getting the Agency of Public Safety established, where might that fall in your priority list?
It's a priority, but I think that the need may have shifted since you last saw the proposal, and I'm not. I don't want to get ahead of the governor's office on where that would fall on the priority list, but there are some discussions about that might look a little different than what we talked about last biennium.
Okay, because it wasn't just talked about. I mean, we got a bill out.
No, I know. Right.
You came so close.
We did, and there's a lot of wisdom in leveraging the existing resources. I can tell you this is a wonderful group, but what I didn't tell you in my introduction of the agency is that Dan and I, the commissioners, we're like the temp workers who come and go, right? It's the directors of each division who are the subject matter experts and are the career professionals in their field. So we are really blessed with an incredible team of bright and eager and top of their game professionals, directors. Director of Fire Safety, Mike DeRocher, is finishing his stint as the president of his national organization at the national level. He's the president of that group. Erica Borneman, the director of emergency management, just finished her year as director of the National Emergency Management Directors. I mean, these are folks who are at the top of their game. The colonel is on the executive board of the nationwide entity that brings together all the state police and highway patrol entities. So, these are folks who are not just statewide leaders, but are national leaders as well. And they are amazing. And you will undoubtedly hear from many of them through the course of the session.
That's great. Thank you. And we will definitely have them in. And the governor's budget address is 2 weeks or
We get the 20th.
Oh, it's the end of next week. So
it's not on Thursday. It's usually
no, it's a
Thursday.
Friday. So we will have you in shortly after that,
Thank you.
for sure, to talk about some of the things that you're not yet at liberty to talk about. We get it.
I mean, I can talk about some high level policy proposals, and I guess the kind of subtitle to that statement is, but for some initiatives relative to the Agency of Education that came out of the Violence Prevention Task Force work. But for those, they're all fine tuning of things that already passed. It's not some big new plan. For instance, on bail laws and some of the finer details around the raise the age legislation and stuff like that, we expect to be bringing proposals that will close a few gaps that we've identified in the past year.
Okay. Are there other questions for the commissioner at this point? Senator White.
Yeah, what is raise the age legislation?
It's legislation that was passed, I think 4 years ago now, that proposed to raise the age of accountability by 1 year at a time, with the ultimate goal being that any case against you would start in juvenile court all the way up to age 20 through age 21. So it went into effect. It rolled out for about a year. Then the legislature hit the pause button on it because they were finding unintended outcomes, right? So it's been paused, and right now, I believe it is anyone up to the age of 19
Right.
has their case automatically commencing in juvenile court rather than commencing in criminal court and being moved
Right.
to juvenile court.
It's part of the justice reinvestment work that we did. And that will be something that our judiciary committee will primarily work on. We
Yeah.
would be more involved if it had to do with, well, the labor and administration side of it, not the like criminal justice policy part of it.
But it is an example of how we're trying to marry science and policy, because we now,
Correct.
particularly the male brain is not fully developed until they're 25. So this is the work of addressing that. That's what Raise the Age is about.
Sure.
Are there other things you want to tell us, or I have a fairly random question, so I don't want to take you off your track if you want to finish what you have to say.
No, ma'am, I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, are there other questions before I?
Yeah, but go first.
And Senator Watson has now joined us, so this is Jennifer Morrison, the Commissioner of Department of Public Safety.
Yes, thank you. It's good to meet you. And I want you to know that even though I wasn't in the room previously, I was listening on the live stream.
Ooh,
So,
Oh,
technology.
wow.
yeah, very fancy.
Well, my random question is, I know you mentioned that fire safety is in your division or in your not agency department. I know that a lot of our fire departments are struggling, like with our EMS and our local first responders, to recruit people. I mean, kind of everybody is at this point.
Uh-huh.
But I've talked it over a number of years with my fire departments, and one initiative that I spoke with them about recently was this program that I read about in the Northwest that is a special fire academy for women. And it is just women go and train, at least the initial training, by themselves, so they don't feel the sort of pressure of having a lot of male firefighters. I don't want to overstate it, but and it's apparently been very successful in Washington State and Oregon. And I asked some firefighters if they've heard of it, and in fact, I heard about it because a Middlebury College student participated in it, and she's a volunteer on the Middlebury Fire Department. And I'm wondering if there's anything you know of in the Northeast, or if that is something that might be interesting to look into.
So we are always interested in ways of attracting diverse candidates into these service organizations. That will never change. We have run day-long programs specific to female cadets, firefighter cadets, young females. Yes, so that has already happened, and it will continue to happen here. We have been the recipient of funding from Senator Sanders' office on a couple of occasions, specifically to allow us to run programs that involve cadets and get young potential firefighters involved early in their lifetime, hoping that they will turn into either a volunteer or career firefighter. And so we have definitely expanded our outreach because of those federal dollars that have come into play in the last couple of years. But we do not have a fire academy specific to women. As you can imagine, that the numbers, there's just no economy of scale here, right? But we have programming specific.
Okay.
to women.
Well, that
And
is great to hear. I'm wondering if like a regional thing with other states in the New England area or something, but that's great to hear you have that option. I'm wondering how it doesn't seem like it's very widely known. The firefighters I talked to didn't know anything about it. Now, of course, they were, middle-aged guys, so they're not the target audience, but still, it seemed like maybe we could do more to promote it with young women. But good to hear there's something, and if there's anything that we could do to help promote that or expand that, I would be personally interested in that. Senator Clarkson has another.
Yeah, no, I just tag on that. We have a number of female firefighters in the Woodstock Fire Department. So are you saying, I mean, when you use the word cadet, I think police, but when you use the word cadet, are you talking about firefighters?
I meant too young to be a full-fledged firefighter, like 16, 17-year-olds.
So, so we have the fire academy. I mean, they could conceivably just use it at a different time. There could be several days of that to build on what you're already doing. I mean,
Oh, sure. I've made a note,
great.
and I will definitely talk to Director DeRocher about this possibility.
But the other thing I've heard, just following on, the other thing I've heard consistently is we raised the standard for firefighter 1 so high that that is a big barrier, as many of us know, to recruiting new firefighters. It would be great if we could backpedal a tiny bit and come up with an entry level firefighter for volunteer firefighters that doesn't immediately involve this huge long program that is both, I mean, it's a big commitment to do that right out of the gate. So it's just like with EMS, we've developed a kind of tier 1 step up into it and see if you like it and see if you like it enough so that you then go to do firefighter 1. So I think if we could explore that, that would be great.
I'm going to turn you over to Deputy Commissioner Batesy because he is a firefighter paramedic background guy and he knows a lot more about this realm than I do. So here he goes.
Thank you.
Hello, Senator Clarkson, thanks. You probably remember me from a lot of time spent with EMS when I was EMS chief earlier.
Yes.
Thanks for your question, and I think it's an important one. And of course, you know, just like with EMS, we balance safety versus, you know, making sure people have the correct information versus the notion of getting butts into seats in an expeditious way. I do know that in the last year, they have been working on a program they called something along the lines of exterior firefighter, which would be a condensed version. I don't want to say that it's finished or it's rolled out yet, but I do know there's been lots of discussion about it, and I do know that they were working on it. So I think we're approaching that point, but I'd want to circle back and double check on that for you. But I know there's been a lot of conversation around it anyway.
If you'd be kind enough to do that, it would be great. To me, that's low-hanging fruit that we could do that would bring in a lot more volunteers.
Yeah, I'll follow up with the director and gladly get back to you. But I do know there's been a lot of conversation around it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm happy to be involved if you need me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have a roadmap for stuff like that. I mean, we have the 3 tiers of certification for law enforcement officers. So it shouldn't be impossible. And it sounds like it's well underway.
Okay, great. And Commissioner, did you submit any written testimony at all? I haven't checked on our website. No? Okay. If you have anything that you want to submit as a sort of departmental overview or anything, and a contact list or anything like that,
For each division.
You could send it to Olivia Parker, our committee assistant, and she can share it with us.
Yeah, a contact list with either cell and email would be great because you have a couple new people.
We would not share that contact list publicly, by the way. But any overview or whatever you want to send, that would be fine. Are there any other questions for the commissioner? Senator Watson, do you have anything for Morris? Okay. We will certainly have you back in to talk to us, especially after the governor's budget, and also I'm sure your division directors and the more frontline people as well, subject area. Senator Clarkson.
Sorry, we have 3 more
yeah,
minutes,
we have 3
right?
minutes.
We have 3 minutes, Jen. Big question for Matt. Matt, what's our vacancy rate? Because I'm wearing both hats, workforce,
Matt Birmingham, Director of State Police. We are at 51 vacancies currently, which is about 16% of our total sworn staff.
51, is that what you said?
51.
Okay.
51 out of 330. So I'm not quick with math like that, but I think it's about 16.
Is that vacancies in state police or the whole department?
That's vacancies are only sworn state police positions. I do not know what the entire department's vacancy rate is. That is just the sworn state police troopers.
And at some point, I anyway, and I'm sure the rest of us would love to know what your plan is to fill those. And yeah.
We are working every day on our plan. Let me just
I
say,
know you are. I know you are.
there's no
Question.
silver bullet or magic potion to make this better. It's very complicated. It is part of the larger issue that every sector is dealing with when it comes to staffing shortages. And then I think law enforcement has an extra layer on top of that. It's a challenge for law enforcement, and our applications have dropped about 80% in the last 3 years. And we haven't changed our qualification standards. So we hire about 5% of all applicants. So we're just not getting people in the door. The last 3 classes have been between 5 and 6 people. And we have 2 classes a year, and we really need about 15 people in a class to just maintain our staffing levels. So we've been on a trajectory of loss for the last 3 years that is unsustainable. So we're throwing every idea out there at the wall, but it's not. There's no easy fix to this.
Okay. Well,
So I'm happy to come in and tell you what we're doing. It's a lot of different things. A lot.
okay. We will definitely want to have you come in and just talk to us about state police. I mean, I think it would be also interesting to hear a little bit more about, I know there were some new initiatives that in the last couple of years, some of which we initiated about embedding mental health professionals. And I would love to get an update on that. So
Absolutely. That's going incredibly well. That's an
Excellent.
area of incredibly positive news. And we have embedded workers in every barracks. We're still trying to fill 2 that we lost positions, lost people out of. And then our long-term goal is to double the number of workers in time. So it's incredible. It'll take time, a lot, but
yeah,
that's our long-term goal. But it's incredibly positive for both the people who are receiving the services and for the troopers that work alongside these embedded mental health workers.
great. And also first responders to substance use disorder or overdoses. That's another issue that I'm particularly interested in. So I'm sure the whole committee is. So we will definitely have you back in to talk more in depth about state police.
Yeah.
And yes,
We want an update.
absolutely. But we are actually out of time. We have to move to our next witnesses. So Commissioner, thank you so much. It was really nice to have you in to meet your deputies and meet the committee, and thank you for your work. And we will hear from you again, I'm sure.
I'm sure, and we appreciate the work you're doing. We know it's a busy time for you. Please call on us if we can be helpful in any way. We have a great team here at DPS, and we stand ready to help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. You as well.
Okay. And next
So.
witnesses. Yeah. Yeah, well, we're having more people. Yes. So our next people are, thank you for coming by. Is also on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
John Campbell is here.
Yes, they're
Okay.
here. They have a presentation to share.
Okay, I will, just so you know, it's not.
You can use any.
Okay, I will. You wanna let Ellen?
I feel like you're giving me mad right now.
Are you doing art?
Yes.
She's our doodle queen.
Hi, Tim.
Hello, hey, everybody.
Oh, Tim, look
Is-
who's there.
Is John coming as well?
He and Annie, I think, will both be joining. And there's Annie.
Oh, and Annie, okay. Who's doing that? We heard you have a presentation for us. Is that
Yeah.
true? Like a slideshow? Did you send it to our committee assistant?
We were editing it just a few moments ago. And just in case there's any questions, we'll send, if there's anything we can send to supplement with it, so we can send that right along after.
Okay, that would be helpful, so we can have it, we can post it on our website. Gives you a look at it again.
It doesn't appear your
Um,
camera's on.
How do I do? Yeah, I have to do that. Yeah, I see it down there, start video.
Annie, you might want to,
Annie, we can hear
we
you.
can hear you. Oh, there she is. Hi,
It's good to see you.
is
Good
John,
to see you also.
is John coming? We want to wait for him to get
Can you go
started.
get
Or
John?
he's-
Yes, he is coming. I just saw him a few seconds ago. I just sent him to be retrieved.
Oh, okay, excellent. Well, we're on a tight schedule because we have, today is, Public Safety Day. So we are gonna just introduce ourselves and let you guys get started. I'm Senator Ruth Hardy from the Addison District and the new chair of GovOps.
Senator Tanya Vyhovsky, Chittenden Central, Vice Chair of GovOps.
Senator Becca White, and I'm from Windsor.
Senator Bob Norris, Franklin County.
Senator Ann Watson from Washington County, and
Yes,
hello.
hi.
neighbor.
Hello.
Oh, was Tim a neighbor?
Tim's neighbor.
Oh, and Annie lives close by too.
Mhm.
Allison Clarkson, Windsor District, good to see you both. And good to see you, Tim, in your new capacity.
Good to see you.
Well, we are just hearing from a lot of people. We are a brand new committee. Only Senator Clarkson is returning. So we are just trying to get an overview of every entity we can, that we have time to fit in, about what you do, what areas you cover, and what your priorities may be for the session, including what things you might want us to do or things you might want us to not do, to leave alone. So if you could just, I don't know who's gonna do the presentation. Are you, Tim?
So John is going to, and he says that he is re-clicking on the invite. He thinks he was in the waiting room. And just, this was us we have a little bit of a COVID protocol, so that's why we're in the separate spaces.
Okay.
But
He's-
John says he's joining
Waiting
right
room.
now.
He does not appear to be in the waiting room according to our committee. It's according to Olivia.
Okay. He's gonna try to click in there in a minute, he says.
Okay.
Sorry for the delay.
I'm gonna resend. And we'll give you a chance to actually introduce yourselves once John's here, so.
There he is.
Okay, he's now coming in.
Yay, that's good.
Here he is. Hi, John.
Madam Chair and the committee members, I apologize. Just shows you what my lack of IT skills, because I was sitting in a Teams meeting.
That's okay. It's quite all right. We can hear you, but we can't see you. Do you want to turn your
Oh.
camera on, or are you intentional?
Yeah, hold on, we're gonna do that too. Yeah,
Okay.
now I'll be blushing, of course, when you get me on here. 'Cause I can't believe how much I screwed this up.
No, you're fine. It's okay.
Al, how do I do this? I keep on clicking on start camera.
John, just push as many buttons as you can
Yeah.
all at the same time.
That's what they told me when I went to visit Yankee Nuclear. And
Ouch.
Bottom left, John, and there's a camera and a microphone.
Yep.
And you clearly have a microphone, on, but you probably got a red line through the camera.
yeah, it does. But even my IT guy is here and he can't do it. So
Okay. Well, I think Tim is the co-host right now, so Tim, you might be able to share the slides, but we introduced ourselves, John. I think you probably know who most of us are, so we're gonna skip that. And if you guys can introduce yourselves, now we can't see you, but we can imagine what you look like because we just saw you. Who you are and what your jobs are, and then take us through your presentation, that'd be great.
I appreciate that, Madam Chair. And again, my apologies. My name is John Campbell. I am the Executive Director of the State's Attorneys and Sheriffs. And Annie?
I'm Annie Noonan, the Labor Relations and Operations Director for the department. I've been here about 6 years. I've been around state government for about 42. Most people who've been around state government know who I am, and I know some of you all, so thank you.
And good to see you all, Madam Chair and neighbors. Tim Leaders Dumont, I'm the Legislative and Assistant Appellate Attorney for the department. Good to be here.
Great, thanks for being here. Take it away, John.
Okay, so what we have is a little slide presentation, which just to give you an idea, because it's my understanding, sort of an idea of the how the department runs and what it entails as far as the because it does say the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs, and sometimes that is a misnomer, and we're going to go through that in just a second. I will go through the state's attorneys aspect of this with also with Tim assisting. Tim was a DSA or Deputy State's Attorney in Washington County. And so I'll go through the structure and then I'll turn it over to Tim will discuss a couple of the programs we have. And after that, Annie will discuss the sheriff's side and also the labor relations and budget side of the department. So basically, we have the state's attorneys. I think you all are aware that they're elected every 4 years, and they are prosecutors for jurisdiction in the criminal division. Which on this slide you can see that they handle the felony cases, misdemeanors. We also handle fish and game, all the way down to warrants and inquest. We also are in the family division, which is where we deal with youthful offenders, delinquency cases, CHINS cases, which are children in need of supervision. And also we do the ERPOs in the family division. The civil division is one where we deal with the PCRs, which is post-conviction relief. They are considered to be civil cases, and that is where an offender who is incarcerated and would like to have his or her conviction looked at as being because of if the ineffective assistance of counsel or some other matter that might have come up that they did not appeal on. So that is done in the civil division, as well as guardianship and some of our mental health hearings will go there as well. And after that, we have the other thing too it's important to know that some people don't realize is that the Attorney General, they serve or they have concurrent jurisdiction with us throughout the state. So if there's cases that we do not take or we need assistance from, the Attorney General is there to assist those. Next, Tim. And this is the one we just went through. We want to go to the process screen, Tim. The next one, there we go. So this gives you a little bit of an indication of how this cases come to us. If there's an incident which involves the violation of one of the criminal statutes, it's investigated by the law enforcement, and then law enforcement will make a determination whether there's probable cause to arrest or cite an individual. And once they do that, they bring those cases to our offices where the deputies or the state's attorney themselves will review that and determine whether they feel that there's sufficient probable cause to prosecute the case. And also, more importantly, in my mind, and this is what we try to that we're, I think, really gaining on, is the fact that we tell the prosecutors that we're not necessarily here to get prosecutions. We're here to make sure that justice is done. And the fact is that we do that in a number of ways, and it's not just always seeking someone to be incarcerated or to face lengthy probation periods. We've been very active with our community justice programs, which we'll go into in a second. And I think that is really one of the keys that I think we've been very successful over the last 4 or 5 years in changing sort of the mindset of the offices. And we've also had change in a lot of the state's attorneys, and we do have state's attorneys that are or understanding what the actual roles are of the prosecutors, and that are looking to help with rehabilitation and the other restorative potentials that are available. Then from there, if we try to go through as the either diversion or the restorative justice programs, for those cases that don't meet that criteria, or the individual who is the defendant in the case, if they fail out of those programs or they're not participating, then we go through with a trial if a plea cannot be reached. And then those are all obviously before the court, and then the court, if they determine it, or if a guilty verdict does come up, then that will result in a sentencing or some post conviction disposition. So the next one here, these are, and I'm going to throw this over to Tim now, because again, this is a really important aspect of what I consider to be the criminal justice process for the state's attorneys, and those are the restorative justice programs. Tim has actually handled cases and referred cases to these diversion and the community, the CJC. So Tim, I'll let you have it, and you can explain what they offer.
Thank you. And just as a point of notoriety, I think I was #1 in the state last year for diversion referrals, and I was very proud of that, because it is so important that we're using our resources appropriately. And as Annie and John know, my time with Beth Pierce, fiduciary responsibility is kind of at the core sometimes of using our resources appropriately. And the court diversion program is a great opportunity. It usually happens after someone has received a docket number and a charge. So they might go to arraignment, and then the judge says to them, "You've been offered diversion by the state's attorney. Would you like to take that?" And then there's a program that's available in every county for someone to engage in restorative practice, to sometimes return property, money or otherwise, engage in a reparative process with victims and or the community, and hopefully get to a good result where they complete that program. And if they do so, the expectation is that the case will be dismissed and eventually off the record. And so it's a great program, but it sort of sits in a phantom environment for a little while the programming is happening, because there's the docket number, but it's inactive when they're doing the diversion programming. But if they fail out, as John mentioned, or there's a failure to engage, the program can send it back to the state's attorney's office for a refiling, and then the arraignment happens and it picks back up. Something I wanted to note is that at every point in the process, this is an opportunity, whether it's the day one all the way through jury draw. I've had folks go to diversion right up until the last moment, and there is some aspect of accountability built in there, and the victim's voice is so important, and that's all a part of the restorative process. And you could talk for hours about that, but I just wanted to touch on that program here. Within that program, there's something called Tamarack. That's for mental health and substance use overlay. So if someone comes in with a very small amount of an illicit drug, and there's maybe some mental health issues, Tamarack within the diversion programs helps individuals sometimes get treatment, get right back on track, and it's very successful. The next is community justice centers. Sometimes these are within the diversion programs based on funding mechanisms, but sometimes they're separate. In Washington County, you have one in Montpelier and one in Barry, and between those two, they cover the whole county. Depends on the county. But CJC referrals, as they're called, can happen at any point. Prior to a charge, 7 counties have official programs, practices where they have officers directly refer some types of cases to CJCs. Washington County is one of those. Or they could happen at any point in the process. I had one recently that was, basically felt like it was going to trial. And then the person said they really would love an opportunity to do some restorative work, and successfully did so. And the case was kicked out right before trial, and because they did a great job engaging with the victim in a reparative and restorative process. And it's just a very fluid. The reason I'm sort of dwelling on it is it's just one of the most incredibly fulfilling parts of being a prosecutor, is working in these areas, because you're able to be flexible about how to address the case-by-case analysis. And I just think it's such a rewarding part of the job. One thing I'll note, there's certain types of cases that can't go to the CJC. under 24 VSA 1967, no case involving domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking shall be referred to CJCs. And you know, the bottom line with these types of programs is that they're just there's never been more opportunities to address things outside of traditional criminal justice practice, and wanted to put that there as a stamp. The next slide, John, is treatment court.
You got that?
Hold on just 1 second.
Oh yeah, sorry, I can't see you.
Well, that's okay. Senator White has a question.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I have a question around if you have appropriate data to reflect the lack of recidivism or the success of these individual strategies compared to the traditional alternatives.
So I don't have any data off the top of my head here. And I think the diversion programs, Willa Farrell can probably talk more about that from the Attorney General's office. And the Department of Corrections actually maintains data on CJCs because they fund that program. But what I can tell you from practice is sometimes you do see folks come back. And one of the things I appreciated about the case-by-case analysis is that there are different circumstances every time someone touches the system. And so one of the things, not to avoid the question, but when folks love data, and I appreciate that, but whether it's treatment court or diversion, I consider, you know, a successful thing to be, one, did we keep that person alive? Did we have good, successful contact with the victim? And so I think some of them are so successful, and there has been a basic understanding that if someone interacts with the criminal justice system for the first time, let's say it's a disorderly conduct that happens because of a lot of different factors, but a fighting incident, and they get referred to the CJC or the diversion program, very high likelihood that that person won't come back because it's their first touch on the system. Other folks, because of socioeconomics and all sorts of other things, they're coming back into the system for lots of different reasons. Doesn't mean they shouldn't have that opportunity, but it also doesn't mean that they won't come back because of other issues that are going on in life. So I don't have data with me, but I can tell you from experience that I would see a lot of people that I came to know who would come back into the system, and it didn't mean that they didn't get that shot again at the restorative practice. Because
and Senator White, they as Tim mentioned, Willa Farrell from the AG's office, she does have a whole breakdown. They've been spending the last few years gathering data, and so it is fairly complete, but there are some holes that are still going to take a couple of years to fill and to get a more exact response to questions like you have, which are good questions. That, you know, are these programs working, and you know how much has changed from how it was done prior to this. So, but I think that the data that she will be able to provide you shows the increased number of cases that are referred to the diversion programs. And again, the conversation with her would be probably beneficial.
We should have the same involvements.
Yeah, we'll have her in. I think Senator Vyhosky has a question.
Yeah, and this may be a better question for Willa, but do you know if the AG's office is also tracking demographics of who is off-ramped into diversion and restorative practices and who is charged with a crime in the same instance, like the same type of crime instances?
I think the crime research group might have some information on that. And again, some of the same gaps in data collection. Sometimes I think with CJCs, for example, there's data collected by DOC, diversions collected by AGO. I think the crime research group might have done some work on that. I can circle back with you, Senator, certainly, and see if they have something.
Thank you.
That'd be great. And I just want to note, we're on a tight schedule, so we only have about 10 minutes left with you guys. If you want to speed through a little bit more, and so I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance to have their say. Senator Clarkson has a question though, and then we're going to move forward.
I just want to say to these issues, one of the challenges that we have with the state's attorneys is there are 14 different state's attorneys. Each one of them handles these 3 areas of off-ramping differently. And one of the things I want to hear at some point about is how can we make some of the state's attorney's practice is more consistent and uniform across the state. And I think it's a big question that we need to address at some point.
And we're happy to have that discussion, and there are, because it would definitely take a lot more time than we have right now. And we'll work with you to discuss that. I think in the interest of time, then I'd like to switch right down to Annie, and who can give you just more of an overview on the other parts of of our department, because we do have a large department, a large number of employees, and they're all. Annie, make sure she takes good care of them.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so just in a very broad overview, the department has 4 areas of budget. And the reason I say that is it helps kind of frame the conversation as to where folks work. So we have the state's attorney's budget, the sheriff's budget, the victim advocate program budget, and the SIU. And let me just kind of go through that. The department has 176 employees in total. That includes central office staff. We have 109 of those employees work for the state's attorneys. That would be the 14 state's attorneys plus the deputies plus our administrative support staff, and victim advocates are 27. The sheriffs have 40. So the total of that would be the 176. So again, 109 in the state's attorney's budget, 27 under the victim advocate budget, and 40 under the sheriff's budget. Recruitment and retention, just like any other employer, has been challenging, but I think we're making really good headway in that regard. We currently have 7 vacancies in the deputy state's attorneys, and that's on average about the same churn that we would expect to see anywhere in state government, not really any better or worse. It's in the same. I'm not talking corrections. Let me put them to the side, or mental health issues. But in terms of what has traditionally been the churn in state government, we currently have seven vacancies. We have no vacancies in the victim advocate and 1 vacancy in our admin staff. We've had, as you know, we have turnover in new elected officials. We have 5 new state's attorneys. Some of them were deputy state's attorneys, so the process and the system is not new to them. And we have 8 new sheriffs, and similarly, some of those folks came from within county sheriff's departments, so it's not completely new to them. Some of them it is new. One of the reasons that the department was created was to ensure that that the legislature and the administration didn't have to deal with 28 separate budgets. And requests for 28 different elected officials to fund them. So the money all comes here for salaries and benefits and all of that stuff for the most part. Of course, I'll talk a little bit specifically about the sheriffs, because they are that different animal of that public-private ventureship, where the sheriffs basically have money coming in from other sources to fund operations. But for the most part, everything is here. We function under the broad umbrella of the Department of Finance and Management. They give us our budget numbers. We have to meet our targets for those budget numbers. Just on a general idea of like what are the budgets for each of those sections, we get about $16 million a year for the state's attorneys, about $5 million a year for the sheriff's department. That's our 14 sheriffs and the 20 some odd transport deputies. We get $2.2 million for the SIUs, the special investigation units, of which that all but $60,000 goes out in grants for program support and law enforcement support. And we have a budget of about $2.5 million assigned to us for victim advocates, which is, I want to talk just very briefly about that, just in case there's questions about that. This is the first year we have money that was assigned to us because it was state general fund money. Some of you might remember, Senator Clarkson might remember this, but for many, many years, the victim advocates in our department were funded by a U.S. Department of Justice grant, the VOCA grant. And last year, the Center for Crime Victim Services came in and asked the state to change the funding to state money so that they would not provide the US DOJ grant that they asked the administration and the legislature to give general fund money. And the Appropriations Committee said that they would do that, but that since it was coming to support state employees in a state who work for a state department or under a state contract, union contract, that we would get the money in our budget. So we have 27 victim advocates and we have a program coordinator who work under that. So this is the first time we have their budget. I don't need to probably alert you to this because you're not appropriations, but I think it's of interest that I think we will run a little bit short for that program. And we've been supplementing, sort of supporting as much as we can to make sure that we're making everything come out nice on June 30th, which is, I know, what you all like us to do. So we like to do that too. Staffing pressures, our deputy state's attorneys are handling as many as 350 to 400 cases in most of our offices. It's really quite unacceptable. It's way beyond what is appropriate for attorneys to be managing. And that doesn't mean at any given week that they've got all of those on their caseload, but they can't lose track of them. They are important and they have to pay attention to that. We are looking very specifically at the case backlog. I know the judiciary has quoted the number of 7,000, and I want to say thank you to the legislature because during the ARPA money distribution, the legislature gave our department money and with a very good broad mandate that said clear the backlog. And we are doing a fair amount with that money. And I do want to say the only glitch in that, I'll alert you to this because it would be something that you might need to help us with at some point, but clearing the backlog, the money after it came to us as federal ARPA money, the administration converted over to state general fund. And I insisted it go into a one-time, that we needed it in a separate budget, that we needed to be able to maintain that money for the purpose of which the legislature allocated it, which was clear the backlog. And as you know, at the end of the year, as we roll into June every year, any money that is in a department's budget that has not been utilized is normally subject to either reversion or carry forward. So we have to write a carry forward memo. So we've had good cooperation from the Finance and Management Commissioner to ensure that we're able to continue carrying that money forward because trust me, the backlog is not yet cleared. We are working really closely with the judiciary to examine numbers to make sure that we are identifying any areas where we think there are problems and suggesting ways for each office to be able to eliminate that. But realistically, we really are understaffed, and it's not a matter of being able, and I know you're going to hear that from every agency and department. I'm sure everybody who comes in tells you they need more staffing. For us, it's not only the attorneys, but our victim advocates have a caseload sometimes of, there's 2 maybe in an office or 4 in an office. Chittenden has 14 attorneys, including some that 1 or 2 that are funded differently, like through federal money. But, if you have 14 attorneys and 4 victim advocates, their caseloads can be higher. They can be 700 cases because they are handling, proportionally with the attorneys. So, and then the admins, and the admins have been buried alive under the e-filing. I know Senator Clarkson got on a couple of calls listening to the issues with Odyssey and e-filing. So we're hoping that's getting better. And I think to some extent it is. And we have great cooperation with the new court administrator, Terry Corsones, and with Judge Sone. But we're all struggling still through to kind of make sure that system is working as best as it can. But staffing is a problem, and we will have to carry some vacancy savings under the budget that we've been presented. So,
Annie, I'm
yes.
just going to interrupt you because we're pretty much
Okay.
at time. So if you want to just wrap up, I don't want to cut you off, but I'd love for you to wrap up.
Sure. So our role at central office is to make sure that everybody for whom we have oversight for finances or administration of that everybody understands all the rules. We make sure everybody knows what how they can spend money, how they can't spend money, policies, procedures. I will remind you that our staff in the state's attorney's office are in their second contract under VSEA. We have the proud distinction of having settled 2 contracts with not even having to go to mediation. We are going to be entering negotiations probably very soon in the next couple of weeks under the deputy deputy sheriffs for the transport deputies. I know Sheriff Norris has a lot of experience with understanding some of the challenges that we have with the transport programs, but I think we're doing really well, and our goals are, in terms of that program, is cooperation to make sure that we're able to help as many agencies as possible in state government when we have the ability to do so. And I think, is that Sheriff Marcoux that just came in the door?
Yes, Roger just walked in.
So,
Well,
yes,
Annie,
thank you.
so much. I appreciate it. I know we're going to have you back in probably at the same time when we have Sheriff Marcoux in, because we're going to be talking a little bit more about sheriffs in here. Would love to hear more about the budgeting and the financing of the sheriff's departments. I'm just going to ask John or Tim or whomever to send us those slides. If you need to make some more adjustments, go ahead. But you
They
are
have been sent.
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you,
On
Madam
top
Chair.
of it. And I'm sorry that you all didn't have as much time as you needed, but we will definitely have you back in. And Senator Clarkson has one more comment.
Sure, which is, we are your advocates, as is Senate Judiciary and the House counterparts, advocates for your budget. And some of us, as you know, have very real lived experience with this, because that caseload is higher for the SAs themselves. So I appreciate this, and your vacancy rate may be normal, but the experience level of the deputy state's attorneys may not be the same experience level as they have been in the past.
Yeah.
Just saying.
We realize there are a lot of new people, and that makes it harder as well. So
Absolutely.
thank you
Thank
all
you.
Thank you
so
all.
much for your time, and we'll see you again. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye, thanks a million.
All right, thank you. We're on, we're slightly behind, but not too much. Barbara, if you want to come up to the table. Thank you so much for coming. It's nice to see you in person, I think, for the first time, perhaps.
In a long time.
Yeah.
It's great to see you.
Yeah, exactly. We are interested, we're gonna all introduce ourselves and then just turn it over to you and Sheriff Marcoux to tell us about what you do, what your organization, your office does, what your legislative priorities may be for this session, what you might want us to do or not want us to do, and then just have a conversation if we have time for it. We'll give you the full half hour because we had a little bit of a break scheduled in there. As you know, I'm Senator Ruth Hardy. I'm a new chair to the committee, and I'm from the Addison District.
Senator Tanya Vyhovsky, new vice chair of the committee, and I'm from the Chittenden Central District.
Senator Rebecca White from Windsor.
Senator Bob Norris, Franklin County, to include Elbert and Granite County.
Senator Ann Watson from Washington.
Allison Clarkson, Windsor District.
Nice to see you again. Nice to meet all of you.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks. Go ahead, take it away.
Take it away. Okay, well, good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I am Barbara Neal, Executive Director of the Enhanced 911 Board. I've been in this position now for about 7.5 years. Prior to that, I was in the training department at the board. And then prior to that, I was a dispatcher for the Vermont State Police. I'm very happy to be here today. Happy that Sheriff Marcoux is joining us as board chair, and he may have some input as we go along. So I'll give you some introductory information about the board and what we do, and also our current priorities. So I sent a handout over if you have it on your iPads or whatever.
It is on the website. So
Okay,
you should
okay.
be able to
Okay.
access it.
There might be information I reference later on in there, so that's why I pointed out. The 911 Board was established in 1994 as the single governmental agency responsible for the statewide 911 program. The intent of the legislation was to create a statewide system, 911 system, that would serve all Vermonters and help emergency responders locate callers quickly and effectively. So we were made responsible for the design, implementation, and operational oversight of the 911 system. And to that end, we developed and implemented policy, system design, standards, procedures related to the 911 system, and we continue to do that today. So as required by statute, we consult with multiple state agencies and local community service providers to meet all of these responsibilities. We are an independent board. We are not attached to any other agency or department in state government. And the board itself consists of 9 board members, all appointed by the governor, 1 each representing state, local, and county law enforcement, emergency medical services, fire service, municipalities, and then we have 3 members of the public as well. Board staff consists of me and 9 other full-time staff members, 1 part-time administrative support person, and broadly speaking, the staff members are responsible for 4 really categories of work. 1 is IT management, so that's management of the 911 system and our contracted system provider in digital. The next department rather is the GIS database department. That team is responsible for maintaining multiple databases that are critical to the operation of the 911 system, routing your calls, providing the correct information, providing the correct responder information, and so on. Training and communications department is responsible for training and certification of over 100 911 call takers across the state, as well as quality control, public education and outreach, and call taker wellness initiatives. And then we have an administration and compliance department, which takes care of all our administrative functions, front office functions, and also ensures that we are complying with internal and external requirements related to 911 and really sound office administrative procedures.
Sorry, and just clarify, you said there are 100 911 operators or call takers?
Plus or minus, it's right now, I think it's right in the range of about 118. So that's correct. And I'll say a little bit more about them and where they work in just a minute.
Yeah.
So we are currently funded by the Vermont Universal Service Fund, which is a 2.4% surcharge on retail telecommunication sales in Vermont. Our FY23 budget is 4.6 million. FY24 is of course being finalized at the administration. You may be aware that the Vermont Universal Service Fund has experienced significant declines in the past several years, which has impacted our program as well. And we've had to have funds come over from the general fund to support us in the past. So that'll talk a little bit more on priorities too as well. One thing that's important to know and is often a point of confusion is that the 911 board does not have purview over dispatch operations or emergency response agencies and their operations. In your handout, there is an organizational chart just for your reference. I won't get into detail about the details of what all those folks do, but I will say that we are a small and effective team with an individual and organizational commitment to the board's mission in providing this critical infrastructure for Vermonters.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So clarifying question, because this is always, I mean, as you know, we're gonna have a big dispatch discussion this year. Get a 911 call, they direct it to dispatch. There is interaction, but you're separate groups. But you are the one to direct it to dispatch.
Correct. And just to muddy the waters, sometimes the person who is the 911 call taker is also the dispatcher, but the functions are separate, even if it's the same person providing it. So we have purview over that call coming into the call taker, and then when that person puts on their dispatch hat or it's transferred to another dispatch agency, that's when the dispatch response or protocols come into play. And those are set not by the 911 board, but by the individual agencies operating those dispatch centers. Okay. And I'm happy to explain that again and again, because it's hard to make that distinction. So So what you don't see on the organizational chart, if you have to be looking at it, is who's taking the 911 calls.
Yeah.
So the board office staff does not typically, there's an asterisk there that I'll explain in a bit, does not typically take 911 calls. We provide the back end support for the 911 system. So the 911 calls are actually taken by call takers who are employed by 5 different law enforcement agencies around the state. So the Department of Public Safety operates 2 of our PSAPs, that's public safety answering points, at Westminster and Williston in those comm centers. And then we have 4 other PSAPs operated by the Lamoille County Sheriff's Department, Shelburne, Hartford, and St. Albans Police Departments. So those agencies employ emergency communications professionals who function as 911 call takers and separately as dispatchers. So each PSAP is responsible for answering calls from a primary catchment area and is also responsible for providing backup to the other 5 PSAPs. So if a call that is destined for one PSAP encounters a situation where there's no call taker available there, perhaps they're on other calls, perhaps they're short-staffed, that call will automatically and seamlessly route to another of the 5 PSAPs in order to be answered. So that system of sort of that geographic disbursement of the public safety answering points and the ability to route calls like that has served us very well, especially in times of exceptionally high call volume. The example I typically give is Tropical Storm Irene, but you could also make a case for the recent storm over the Christmas weekend, where our call volumes increased by at least half again, as many as we usually get. So the technology that allows these calls to be answered at any of the 6 PSAPs also allows call takers access to the same technical resources and equipment. Because we have developed standards-based training requirements and call handling protocols, a 911 caller gets the same level of service regardless of which of these PSAPs answers the call. Same equipment, same resources, same requirements for how the call is handled and processed. In your handout, you will find the 2022 stats for last year. So we handled, the 911 system handled in 2022 just under 238,000 calls, which is up just 1% or so from 2021. 74% of those calls came from wireless devices. That's down from 75% in 2021, but that number is just expected to keep increasing. So I think nationally the number's at about 80% come from wireless devices. There were 25,000 abandoned calls in 2022. An abandoned call is when a caller hangs up before the call taker is able to answer the call. And those calls all require follow-up, of course, to ensure there's no emergency. So we're happy to see a 14% decrease in those calls, although they are still hang-up calls and abandoned calls are still a significant impact on the PSAP operations. It takes us about 5 seconds to answer the call on average, and we're on the phone with a caller for just over 2 minutes was the average last year. And during that time, the call taker is asking or determining the nature and location of the event, asking necessary key questions to provide that information to responders and assess the situation. They contact or directly dispatch the responders, and then provide a pre-arrival instructions, which are part of the protocols. They're very scripted, but they are designed. The goal of those is to hopefully prevent the situation from getting any worse before responders get there, or at least providing some instruction for the caller to keep them safe. And finally, in 2022, we saw our text to 911 call volume increase by 31% to 622 calls. So it's still a very small amount. in comparison to 238,000 voice calls. But that is a critical service for the deaf and hard of hearing community, also for folks who are in a situation like a domestic violence situation or some other situation where making a voice call could aggravate the situation. And it has proven to be life-saving, as a matter of fact, since it's been in place.
So just quick question. How, because they're also given the quality of our cell service and coverage around the state, you can get a text through if you have one bar where you may not be able to get a call through.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, how do we get on text? What 911?
I encourage you not to do all these steps right now, but you open your text app on your phone and simply type 911 in the two.
You create a new contact, which is just 911.
Correct. Or if you're ready to send the message, put that in the to field. Include in your initial message where you are. The location is the most important piece of information to send a call right. So, and then hit send, and it will go through to one of those 6 PSAPs based on your location.
And this is true anywhere in the country?
No, it's not.
So just here. So we
here and in other places.
So we don't have to do 802 911.
No,
just 911.
Right. If there's not text to 911 is a what I want to say best effort operation, right? So that if the call cannot get through for any reason, perhaps there's some glitch in the system or not in our system, but in the wireless system, the wireless networks that might prevent a call from going through, or if you're in an area outside of Vermont that does not provide text to 911 service, you will get a bounce back message so that you know your communication did not go through. So yes, it has worked very well. So, but it is not all across the nation. Vermont was one of the first states to deploy statewide text to 911 back in 2012, which was about 2 years before the FCC required it. So,
Well done.
Senator Watson has a question.
Yes, so that is really fascinating, really cool that exists. I was not aware that that was an option. Do you have like promotional materials, like graphics or something that we could share with our constituents to let folks know that this is an option?
Yes, I can get you some materials like that. And actually, I'll go in a little bit into our public education and outreach efforts, which we've had a lot of shifts and changes in our training and communications department actually for several years. And we're re-establishing the framework for that program, which includes a much more robust public education and outreach. And so the text to 911 message will be getting some more airtime, so to speak. So yeah, yes, I've run across a number of people that are not aware that there's text to 911. Also wasn't, so I would love that material to blast that message out.
You could just send it to Olivia. We can post it on our website and send it and share it with everybody so we can share it with folks as well.
Okay, will do.
Excellent, thank you. Carry on. We have about 15 minutes left for the two of you, so just so you know for timing.
Well, I was just going to shift over to kind of the priorities, not necessarily legislative priorities, but the things that I worry about, right?
Okay.
So that certainly the 911 funding challenges that have been occurring for the past several years have taken up some time. As I mentioned, we're funded by the Vermont Universal Service Fund. That it has been having decreasing revenues for multiple years that impacts us each year. Now, in a past session, the administration recommended that we go to the general fund. That did not happen, and we're waiting now to see where the administration wants to go as far as their budget recommendations for this year. So
there was conversation last year. There may have been actually, a bill in the House on this. I have flashbacks to talking about it in the finance room, but we didn't move forward with anything.
Correct. So we're still funded by the Vermont Universal Service Fund.
And then we did a general fund supplement.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So we'll see where things land with that when the administration has made all the decisions it needs to make. So. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the Universal Service Fund, but if you need more information about that as we go along, you can certainly ask me. And also the Public Service Department is really the best place to explain the ins and outs of the revenue shortfalls and what's anticipated moving forward. So the other priority for our office or concern for our office is the PSAP staffing shortages that are going on all around the state, but most notably with the Department of Public Safety's 2 call centers, which traditionally have answered 68 to 70% of the statewide 911 call volume. Since they began having significant staffing issues in the middle of 2021, that call volume that they have answered was at its worst, and it has improved since then, but at its worst was at about 55% of the statewide call volume. And so you remember when I said earlier that all of the PSAPs back each other up. If there's not a call taker available, the call will route elsewhere. What was happening, and still is, but to a bit lesser degree, is the calls that were destined for those DPS call centers would roll out. The system did this automatically, would roll out to the regional PSAPs, which have fewer workstations and didn't, especially in the beginning, have the equipment or the manpower to handle those calls. Well, I should say they did handle those calls, but it was a significant impact on their operations. So things have very, very slowly started to improve as far as the call volume that the Department of Public Safety is answering in the past, and I mean very recently, like in the past 2 weeks, the Williston Center has been up over the 90% threshold, which is the expectation that any PSAP answer 90% of its primary catchment area calls. Westminster is still about in the low 80s, high 70s or low 80s. So it's a continuing struggle. I'm not sure what the current vacancy rates are at those call centers, but certainly Commissioner Morrison will be able to give you more information on that. The regional PSAPs have, over that same period of time, experienced their own, which feels more normal ebbs and flows of staffing situations. So they may go through a situation where they're down 2 or 3 people, and it certainly has an impact on the people that remain. But it has not had as prolonged an impact as the shortages at the Department of Public Safety.
That is interesting. We just heard from DPS. I wish we'd heard from you first. So we could ask them specifically why the disparity between the 2 types of PSAPs and why there are vacancies, especially in the DPS ones. Do you have a speculation or?
I don't. I would not want to speak for them. I would encourage you to speak to Commissioner Morrison.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have been working on some things to mitigate the impact of these staffing shortages. One thing that was implemented, well, in the immediate, when we first became aware of the problem, we immediately deployed our 2 board training coordinators to 911 call taking responsibilities in our own emergency operations center during certain critical hours of the day. So rather than taking on their normal training and communications responsibilities, they were sitting taking 911 calls for some period of time. We also developed further relationships with the regional PSAPs who could commit some of their staff in an overtime capacity to provide what we call dedicated 911 call taking services. So these are the people that are coming in, on an overtime basis to sit for some period of time and take 911 calls and only 911 calls in their centers. So they are not doing administrative responsibilities. They are not doing dispatch responsibilities. They're not handling dispatch phones or radios and so forth. So just 911. And we've seen they have been answering anywhere between 3 and probably 6% of the statewide call volume each week over the past several years. So Hartford, St. Albans, and Lamoille County participate in that right now, and Shelburne has expressed an interest in it. We just haven't quite gotten it all finalized in the case of Shelburne. So the board is also considering ways to have that dedicated 911 call taking initiative become more of a perhaps permanent solution that will help prevent situations where we're dependent on any one call center, and we have sort of this secondary approach to call taking. It's pretty amazing the amount of 911 calls that a single person dedicated to that function can take without the dispatch responsibilities as well. So those conversations are still going on. And I believe that those two are really the issues I wanted you to be aware of that I'll be talking about or worried about as we go along. Yeah. Do you have anything you want to add?
Senator Norris.
I just have a quick question, Barbara. You have to enlighten me on this. We were talking about the universal funding for 911.
Mm-hmm.
Were those the taxes that we as taxpayers here in Vermont had when we had hard lines?
Mm-hmm.
There was a portion of, so do you attribute to the loss of that, to the loss of hard lines?
Yes.
And we don't receive monies, it was gonna cell phone. There's nothing.
Right, that is, really public service can explain this to you in more detail, but because people have moved away from landline phones, that charge is not being collected on as many landline devices. Moving to wireless devices, the charge is only on the telecommunications portion of your bill. And most of, this is really simplified explanation, but in most of your cell bill is that not voice communications. So the charge is applied only to the voice portion. In a complicated method that I couldn't explain to you, but public service certainly.
Everyone understands it anyway.
So, but that's the reason for the decline.
And this is an issue that the Finance Committee and the Ways and Means Committees have talked about
For a while.
Mm-hmm. Well, my last 2 years on finance, we talked about this quite a bit, and unfortunately didn't come up with a solution. So I'm sure they'll talk about it again this year, but we will be involved more from the side of the dispatch and call taking and administration of the service, which will dovetail with the funding for sure. But yeah, so we will certainly hear from you again. Sheriff Marcoux, did you want to say anything before
I'm not
yourself or?
I just want to, I'm Roger Marcoux, I'm from Lamoille County and I'm currently unindicted. So
This is good.
I have anything to do with 911. Barb Neal is the authority. I have so much respect for her. I've been the chair for many, many years. But Barb and I like to think work seamlessly, but I just let her do her thing. And as much as I can tell you that you're in good hands whenever you've got a question and Barb answers it. And I'm not going to be redundant because I know you've got a lot going on. So, but it's nice to meet you all. I'm sure I'll be talking to you.
Yes, we will be talking sheriffs, as you alluded to in your introduction.
I am scared
We
to
will
death.
certainly have you back in to talk about that. And yes, it's great to know that our 911 is in the hands of somebody who can literally take on all the emergencies. So yeah, thank you so much, Barb. Did you have a quick thing? Senator Ferguson?
Okay, I was like, it's not me, okay, good.
No, just on your data, it would be, you referred to several times, the high call volume times. And it would just be interesting for us to know what those are because they relate to judiciary. We have a member of Senate Judiciary here. too. I mean, depending on whether they're domestic violence or they're traffic. And my guess is most of them are either one or the other.
So this is, we are not able to tell you the nature of each 911 call
Without
without,
you can tell us the times. When are those high volume times?
I can tell you high volume in general, but not if they're domestics or accidents.
Oh, no, I know you can't do that.
Okay, yeah.
But it would be helpful to know what are your high volume times and and how many come and the cellular ones are catching up, even though they're down a bit to the landlines. And landlines, remember, are not the lines you have with Comcast, because that's technically not a landline.
Right, correct. Those are VoIP.
So people think they're landlines.
Excuse me, I'm just gonna, that's my alarm going off. Sorry about that. It's not a
It's
call.
better than it's worse than one of ours.
Uh-huh,
Let's hope it
yes.
goes in a 911 call.
Yes. Not that either, I apologize. Okay,
Um,
there we go.
Well, unless you have any quick things to add, I'm just gonna say thank you so much for coming in and talking with us. I know we'll see you both again at some point. And thank you for your really, really important work for our state.
Here.
Thank you very much. I do have a quick question about the best way to get information back. So we're looking for text to 911 info
Yep.
and high call volume times. Send it to.
If you send it to Olivia,
Okay.
she can share it with the committee.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it's just a single point of contact, easier for you.
Perfect.
But thank you very much, both of you. It's nice to see you again and to meet you, Sheriff Martin.
Meet you.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna take just a 6 or 7 minute break. We have our next witness scheduled at 3:10. Is that right? No. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I'm sorry, I messed, it's my bad. Our next one is actually at 3. Can you just tell him we're gonna take a few minutes of just a quick break?
Yeah.
I have a hard stop at 4, so I'm gonna really limit your questions in the next part of it, because I need to be on a Zoom call at 4. But take a break and a stretch, and we'll start again at 3:10.